What we're doing right now, it's literally setting up our articulator and making sure that these measurements don't move. Now, every articulator is going to be different, right? And you have the brass articulator, which we're going to work on it now. You also have your chrome articulator, which is the silver one. But in this particular case, we're only going to work with the brass articulator because with an incisal pin and the thumb screw in the back. So once we have the thumb screw locked, we have this piece of the incisal pin locked. Make sure that doesn't move. Okay? Anything moving forward from what we're gonna do now, if it moves, it's going to alter your case. It's gonna do some bad things to it. So we're gonna make sure we don't do that. Now we have to mount this particular case. This is our model. We want to make sure we put this model and this setup in between this articulator and keep it right in the center, like this. The first thing we want to do before we do anything to the models, we're going to secure our bite. Remember, this is our bites that are fabricated for us. These bites are representation of the bite block. So we're going to use these bites as a mock. So we're going to call it a bite registration for moving forward. This is basically a occlusal rim cut in half. The patient had bit into it. Okay. You're going to use your fawn stock or any instrument. You're going to have hot wax. Not a lot. Hot wax. You're going to flow some hot wax in between. Yeah? Oh, perfect. Thank you. Actually, it's one step I forgot to mention. Before you do this, we're going to put keyways. Okay, these are called keyways. All I'm doing right now, I'm putting like 3 marks, random 3 corners or tripod. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to trim these. I'm going to use my egg burr, small egg burr, and I'm going to give it a divot. And let me trim it, then I'm going to explain why I'm doing that, because I'm going to turn on the vacuum form right now. Sorry? Yeah, so the first thing you want to do, you want to take it to the model trimmer to kind of give yourself like a slightly, fairly flat surface. Then you're going to take it to your bench. You're going to use the bench lay or your handpiece. I like to use the handpiece to trim some keyways. Give me a second, I'm going to explain. Right? So now we're going to do these keyways. Can somebody tell me what are the purpose of these keyways? Just take a shot. Yeah.
For stones, the stone need to hold the model.
Yeah, so for the stone to hold on to this, and if this do ever come off from our articulation, right? Now there's a chance that this is an articulation, right? If we drop it in hot water, or if something happened, I'm going to mock something right now. Give me a second off camera. Now, is this the same model we're going to work on right now? Right? Fairly same model, minus the post stamp done on it. and we articulated this case, so we're about to work on it. Oh, my model dropped. Guess what just happened? We used a bite block, right? We used this bite block that a doctor sent us. Now, in order for us to re-articulate this, we gotta call the doctor to bring the patient back in, and we gotta send for another bite block. Luckily, in your case, you have this, right? You have a duplicate in a silicone. But in the lab, we don't have that. So the moment your model de-articulates itself, you see these little Q-ways that we have? They're gonna go back right exactly where we had it. So now I'm just gonna super glue it or glue gun it, whatever the case may be. Now I got it back exactly where I want it. Otherwise, we're doomed. Because we get one of this, only one in the dental lab, and we use it to mount. We use it to mount our case. Once this is mounted, this is literally gonna get destroyed. And we're setting up, and then if this happens, how am I going to re-articulate this back in again, making sure that we have the same VDO in place? Because then it could be this way, it could be here, it could be here, we wouldn't know. Right? So this is why we're gonna make these keyways. Once you finish your keyways, once the keyways are done, once these keyways are completed on the top and bottom, now we're going to put our maxillary and mandibular model in place, and we're going to flow hot wax in between. Why are we putting hot wax in between? Just so that it can hold it in place. So when we go ahead and mount it, what I'm going to do next, it's not going to fall all over the place. Some people put elastic band. Some people take popsicle sticks and then actually like super glue or glue gun popsicle sticks. Because this is a very, very crucial case. Now we want to make sure that we don't alter the spike. If any movement to happen from here, we're going to flow some wax on the inside. Sorry. We're going to flow some wax in here. If this is a real case, and if we alter any option or any bite that changed, it's going to go to the doctor's office and it's not going to fit in the patient's mouth. It's going to be open or it's going to be closed. The bite's going to be off. The doctor's going to spend a lot of time adjusting this. So once we have the wax in place, let it cool for a few minutes or a couple of minutes, and then we're going to bring our articulator and we're going to mount this. Now this is tricky. You don't want to mount it, don't forget, maxillary facing the top. You don't want to mount it sitting completely like this. You want to have some plaster on the bottom and some plaster on top. You don't want to mount it here this far because you won't be able to close. You want to find the center. The best way to do it, and to kind of give your eyes something to go to, use your pencil. Have your model in the center. Just draw something like this, because when you do the next step, which I'm going to show you right now, I can use that line that I just drawn, and this is going to tell me that this midline is parallel, because I want to make sure the midline that the doctor has given us right here is going to be, it's kind of hard for me to show you from this angle, but that midline is going to be exactly where the incisal pin lies. Does that make sense? It's not gonna make sense until you see the next step. Okay, so now that's all I want you guys to do before we do anything else. Keyways, wax up in place. Once the bite is waxed up in place, draw your midline, which the doctor or us, we gave you, onto the model. And bring it all the way to the back. All the way to the back. Why not? Right? Doesn't hurt. Now you're gonna get to your favorite part, which is mixing plaster. Yes. We're gonna take our bowl, some water, maybe a little less. This much water should be okay. And then you're gonna make a plaster. I'm doing this off camera. You'll see I'm just mixing plaster and water. Now you're going to mix your plaster, and in this particular case, you're going to have a very, very limited amount of time. Okay? Very limited amount of time. Because between the plaster fully setting and the plaster being really soft, you're looking at like 2 to 3 minutes. Okay? So, still runny. Okay, it's getting better. Now what you want to do is take some plaster on your spatula, apply it on the bench. And you'll be doing this directly on the bench in the plaster room. Maybe a little bit more. Take your articulator, place it directly on top. Make sure those areas are filled. Be very careful not to get any stone around here, because remember, if you close it, that's where the pin goes. So the plaster should stay within that vicinity, like, you know, where that whole clearance was. You see that edge? You're going to keep the plaster within that edge area. Now you're going to add a little bit more plaster. Very precisely. Add a little bit more plaster. So 2 spoons of plaster should be enough. Now the next thing you're going to do is you're going to take the model that you have and you're going to place it on top of the plaster. Now you see the lines that we had drawn from the midline and on top. That line is going to guide us that we're not going to place it this way. We're not going to place it facing backwards. Is that we're going to place it directly on top. And you see that plaster right now, it has a perfect consistency that it's going to withhold the load and the weight of these 2 models and the bite combined. Now I'm going to close it. I'm going to press it down a little bit more, make it to the right, a little bit to the left. I see it's the center. And while I'm doing it, I'm actually going to look at from the side to make sure that I also create myself some space to apply the plaster on the top. Now you see here, I have space. At the same time, you need to look at the pin right here. There's a... Did you guys get your plaster knife yet, or no? No? Okay. Now you can lift it up very gently. If you got extra plaster here, you're going to clean that plaster. Either if you have a plaster knife. Spatula does the job too. You can just clean it out. So you don't want to have anything there. Now close it back and leave it. When you can apply a little bit more pressure on this plaster, which is workable, clean the excess. Now we're going to do the same thing from the other side. We're going to clean that. And anything else, the plaster, some small little residues, we're going to blend it in with the rest of our model. And if you have anything on the top, oops, let's go. Okay, and if we have any excess plaster in the back, we gotta clean that also. And at this point, you see, I'm within my 3 to 4 minute time range. And everything that I started from literally mixing the plaster, and as soon as the plaster was ready to apply the weight on it, from there up until now, I'm looking at the clock, I'm at the 3 minutes. And within the 3 minutes right now, we have this plaster right here. Remember when I made you guys do those stone balls or plaster balls and be able to play with it? There was a reason behind that madness. Because now that skill of what you did to play with the plaster and be able to make a ball will come handy now. Because we want to make sure that you do this plaster exercise as clean, as precise, and as quick as possible. So clean the back. Now if you have a bowl of water beside you, submerge your fingers in a bowl of water and then kind of like clean around it. Like blend it in. Not too much. I'm not showing you to give it a bat, but just like blend everything around. Making sure everything is nice and smooth. Anybody done any like fixing a wall at home or any drywall? This is what it is. It's literally the drywall. Those of you guys work with drywall, doing any custom molding, the plaster of Paris is pretty much hydrocal. It's a plaster of Paris, and that's exactly what we're doing right now. So when this is done, you wait. In the meantime, you go ahead and clean your plaster bowl. Okay. Once a good 3 to 4 to 5 minutes has passed, that you can kind of touch the plaster, and you know the plaster is still soft-ish, it's still soft, but it's not like soft flop, it's not runny, it's not like whipped cream, right? Then what you're going to do is you're going to repeat the process again, but this one's for the top. So when you do the top one, you're going to open the pin. And please, whatever you do, Do not move this. You see how I haven't touched the articulator. The moment I had the articulator placed on the counter, I did not touch the articulator because the bottom is not set yet. So you wait. Now repeat the procedure again. A little bit water and powder, which is in your case water and plaster. Mix, it's all running. And this is when you're doing this in a dental lab, you're not articulating one denture at a time. You do like multiple 10, 20 dentures simultaneously. And that's when you're gonna control your water powder, just like how you'll be doing your pouring impressions, so pouring your models. And I know, like, what you guys are all watching me do this because you're not working on your bite blocks. Because those of you guys I saw working on your bite blocks, you come and ask me a question how to articulate, then I'm going to ask you should have seen the demo. Okay, so now back to my plaster. It's still this back to the same consistency I have. Now, the only thing different you're going to do for this one is you're going to pay attention to 2 different or 3 different areas. Number 1, you want to make sure you fill those keyways first. Take a little bit on top of your spatula and apply. A little bit on this side and apply the keyways. A little bit more on that side. And now apply more on top. Clean up the edge. A little bit more in here. Now you're going to close this until the pin touches the base. In one motion, you close, press. Half of you guys will have this issue because you're going to take too long and you're going to have the space in here. We can't have that. This is wrong. There's a reason we set the pin and we programmed it. So you're going to press, press, press until the pin touches. Once the pin touches, completely secured, that's what you're going to do. You're gonna lock. If you didn't put enough plaster on top, go right ahead, apply some more plaster. Use your spatula and all the skill of drywalling and construction job that you have done around the house to make this articulation as nice, as clean as possible. And that one thing you guys gonna buy this weekend or this week for next class is, Michael, what do you think is going to help us to make this nice and smooth?
Water?
Beside that. Huh?
TLC?
Okay, how do you apply the TLC? Not with your water and your fingers right now. What's the other way? Like, let's say if this was dry, what would you do to this for it to make it smooth? Huh? What kind of paper? Sandpaper. Okay? Wet sandpaper. Okay? Wet sandpaper. Wet sandpaper. It comes in sponges. Okay? Or any sandpaper will work. A wet sandpaper that we're gonna go under this the water, running water on the tap, and we're going to sandpaper this to make sure we have a nice smooth surface. While I'm doing this, the whole thing with my fingers, we're still not going to be as smooth as we want. Because eventually, what do we need? We need like a good junction between the stone and the plaster. Now this is a must. Now in the previous one that I showed you, the one that I broke, on this side, where am I? You see, this was the one that I accidentally broke. You see the junction between the stone and plaster? I want the junction between stone and plaster on the ones you guys are gonna do as precise. If I look at the model, I know where your model starts, where your model ends. There's a reason for that. Because next semester, when we process this, we have to demount it. Now, I did not tell you guys another reason for these keyways is because we're gonna be demounting it on purpose. I just played around with, I dropped the model, it came in half. But that's a part of the next semester lecture. But you wanna make sure this junction is as clear junction as possible, and as the top as rounded. So don't put too much plaster, don't put too little plaster. Enough that it's gonna give your model a nice structured look. So this way, your model is not gonna look like a cone head, and it's not gonna be too flat that it's not gonna be enough plaster on top. Yes, Maria? Sorry? For the sandpaper? Upper and lower. Upper and lower. So you're gonna. So once you get your sandpaper, once it's set, I'm gonna show you obviously. You wanna make sure you sandpaper the top, the bottom, the model, the sides, the front, the back, everywhere. You wanna make sure. And again, up until this point, you see, I did not move the model. This model did not move from here. It stayed intact. It stayed here. It's still on the plate. And when your plaster is ready, when it's completely set, when you lift this up, your whole thing is going to come out in one piece. And that's what you want. If you remove it too early, I'm going to show you what happens. If you remove this model or this articulation, at this point we're going to refer to this as articulation. If this articulation, you lift it up too early, because you know what, you're in a rush, somebody called you, say, we're gonna go for lunch, and I'm articulating, it should be set right now. Are you sure? Yeah, like, it's like, what's the worst thing can happen? You can pick this up. Oh, it's gonna break my heart to do this right now, but I have to. But you know what not to do. You see, it's gonna tug to it, which means the plaster is not completely set. If this plaster would have set, this thing would have not happened. It would have come off, right? So, oh no, it actually worked. I would have hurt my. So this is what you want. You want the base to be nice and clean like this. Because sometimes I love when it works for me, so this time I was hoping it's not gonna work. But it is nice and clean. Because I guess, that 15 minutes did pass from the first time. And you want it nice and clean like this. Please, don't open it yet. Okay? Wait a good 15-20 minutes for it to completely set before we open. Because now, and I'm gonna guarantee you, if I were to open this articulator right now, guess what's gonna happen? Okay, we remove. Oh, no, it didn't happen. That's fine. Wow. I'm not sure if the room is too hot because this plaster is actually setting really quick. Because normally it shouldn't have set that quick, but get back to that. Okay, so there we go. We got our articulated model, worked out perfectly. It's very messy. That's why we're gonna take it under the water and we're gonna clean it afterwards. We're gonna sandpaper everything around to make sure it's nicely clean. And we're gonna make sure we don't have any debris or any stone particles on the model, on the pin or anywhere. And then we're gonna gently open it. And at this time with all the wax or all the water cleaning, the wax will come off. Take it. You're going to get rid of all the wax here. Now, what happens when you bring hot water to a stone and plaster. These two will come apart because plaster contracts at a higher rate than stone. And when you submerge these two pieces in hot water, this whole thing is going to come into two pieces. If that happens, don't worry about it. We're gonna have something that we're gonna do next week to fix it. Okay. Now your model is ready to be articulated, to be set up. Now the question was, why do we need to register the byte? How do we have known if we did not have a byte registration that this is going to be our VDO? This is a space for us to work with. This is the space that this eventual denture that we're going to make is going to go here. We would have not known. This is why the byte registration, this is why the byte block, it's so crucial, it's so important. That we take the byte block, we create a byte, and we articulate. And now this is where we're going to start our setup of the denture. The pin here does not move. The pin here does not move. Now what can happen to you, and it will happen, there's 50 of you, 6 of you guys working on your byte block right now, and the rest of you guys are listening. Out of the rest of you guys that are listening, the other 20 of you guys are going to make this mistake. Okay? Now what's going to happen during this whole time, like now, you don't have this because you're going to give that to the next person, or you guys are going to return it back to us. Now what's going to happen is this pin is going to move. Now I'm going to open this pin right now, purposely. Well, whoa, didn't move. Didn't change anything. Can somebody tell me how come it didn't change anything? How come this byte didn't collapse? No, plaster's holding the top and bottom. Yes. Thank you. The pin right here, the thumb screw. Right? Now, oh, I'm a very careless person. Guess what happened? I left this without even noticing. I opened this by mistake too. And I opened this by mistake. Oh God, look what happened. The byte has collapsed. Sorry? What was that? Now, there's your answer. How do you go back to get your VDO? You don't have a byte anymore. Remember this, the occlusal rim. It got destroyed during this whole process. Or you give this to another person. How do we get back to where we want it? That mark. The 10 millimeter backup plan that we had. So we bring it back to the 10 millimeter point here. Now, even if your little Sharpie line is cleaned up or wiped off, guess what? The 10 millimeter stayed at 10 millimeter. So we can still go back, use our ruler, 10 millimeter in place, bring it back, lock it back in place, making sure there's no space in between, and you are ready to set up your next denture, your first denture. That turned out really nice. Question? Yeah, question?
That's the next person.
Sorry?
Next person, then come back.
What was that?
Next person, then come back. I'm trying to remember what it is.
Next person? Okay, do it. Yeah. 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 Does this happen in the real life situation when a dentist have to call the patient to come back for another bite block? The answer is yes. It's an unfortunate situation, but it shouldn't happen. But majority of time, we make these little adjustments or fail safes for ourselves to make sure that doesn't happen. If you gotta make sure that the pin is tight completely. That's what some of our technicians do is they pour some sticky wax in the back. With the type of wax you guys are gonna be using sticky wax. It's sticky, but at the same time, it's very brittle. Although it's called sticky wax, it's not sticky. It's sticky when you melt it, but it becomes really brittle. So which means if anything to happen, it will crack. So that tells you, oh, wait a second, pin has moved, right? Or we mark the pin, and this is what we do here with the 10 millimeter. I always use in my private practice that 10 millimeter for, it's a standard. It doesn't have to be 10 millimeter. You can make it 5 millimeter. That thing doesn't mean anything. The 10 millimeter, we set up such a standard that if anything to happen like this, like okay, it was how it's a 10 millimeter. Now, other reason we're gonna do, I'm not gonna get to that yet. No. It's already enough. For now, 10 millimeter for that purpose only. Summer and music. Summer?
You say to move the articulator bottom after the 15-minute initial set.
Yes. That's what I just did. I took it out a lot faster. And I was in the hopes that the plaster hadn't set for me to show you what can happen if you do it sooner. I think the room is so hot right now, and I accelerate the setting of the plaster.
What happens if we wait until the plaster is fully set? Will it move? Or will
Nothing,
it break?
nothing.
Nothing.
If you have patience, leave it till the plaster is completely set, the top and bottom, even better. I recommend that for you guys to wait for the plaster, the top and bottom to completely set. So this way, when you take it underwater or under any steam or any water to use like a sandpaper to make it nice and smooth, your model is not going to dislodge itself or demount itself. So,
So about this one, does it matter where we draw this and make it? Because I know some people do like this, like X in the center.
yeah, great question. Great question. Question was keyways. I was actually recording.